Hi there, my name's Simon Drew, and welcome to the Practical Stoic Podcast, where I give you practical Stoic advice for modern times. You can support the show by going to patreon.com/Simon Drew. I also do one-on-one mindset coaching, and you can book in your first free consultation by going to risetothegoodlife.com/coaching. On Facebook, you can join my group, the Practical Stoic Mastermind. But for now, enjoy this episode. Hi there, my name's Simon Drew, and welcome to the Practical Stoic Podcast. And in today's episode, I interviewed the amazing Brian Williamson, and I'll tell you a little bit about Brian. So he's actually connected to Danny Vega, who we also had on the podcast, because Brian and Danny co-host the Ketogenic Athlete podcast together. And here's a little bit of information about Brian. So Brian is a husband, a father of 3, a grandfather of 2, and 1 on the way. He owns a 7-figure nutrition company focusing on the ketogenic diet, and Stoicism is something he's always been drawn to. When he studied philosophy in college, he learned that his innate worldview had a name, and he's been trying to demonstrate proper Stoicism since then. He views Stoicism as a rational, realistic toolbox for dealing with the turbulence of the world around him, never spending too much time on the ups or downs, and always looking forward. He enjoys the idea that maintaining an even keel allows him to maximize his time. And speaking of maximizing time, he actually has 3 podcasts that he does every week based around the ketogenic diet. So the first one is Ketovangelist podcast. The second one is the Ketogenic Athlete podcast, which he hosts with Danny Vega. And the third is Ketovangelist Kitchen podcast, which he hosts with Kerry Brown. He also does a weekly podcast for authors, which is called the Hybrid Author Podcast, which he does with Rekha J. You can connect with him on social media on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook just by searching for the Ketovangelist. And in his brief biography, Brian also said that I should mention that he's also not afraid of spiders. So on that note, I'm really excited to talk to him. I'm really excited for you guys to listen to this awesome interview. So I present to you Brian Williamson. All right, so Brian, look, I've been really excited to have you on my show. I was absolutely, thrilled to come on your own podcast, the Ketovangelist community that you have there, and I was really grateful for the invitation. And we just had such a good time. And look, I've told everybody in my audience a little bit about you, but I guess they'd like to hear it from you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, thanks, Simon. This is a pleasure of mine to come on your show. I'm a big fan. You came on a podcast that Danny Vega and I co-host together, and we had a blast. So I really appreciate you giving me some time on your show. I'm not really I don't talk about myself very well. So this may be a rambling diatribe that goes nowhere. So I apologize.
I can guarantee it won't, but go on.
So I own a nutrition company focused primarily on the ketogenic diet, and I got there doing that because my son was diagnosed with epilepsy, and sort of decided I was going to show him that the ketogenic diet was sustainable, it was healthy, it was useful. The medical community has known that keto has been a form of treatment for various varieties of epilepsy since the early 1920s. So the literature is almost 100 years of evidence for it. And what we're finding now in the later part of the latter half of the 20th century and the early part of the 21st century is that keto has benefits for a wide range of human conditions that we find ourselves in, mostly because of nutrition deficiencies, because of bad nutrition that was taught to us over the years. So my whole purpose really is to provide information, motivation, education, guidance, everything I can to people to know that there's a better way to live. There's a way that you can get the full experience of life in spite of your genetic predispositions, so that you can maximize your time here on Earth. Not to oversell it or sound with too much gravitas at all. Just we're trying to make it to where everyone who understands the benefits of changing their nutrition will reap the rewards of a wonderful life, basically.
Yeah, I love it. And, the thing about my podcast here is I do really want it to be a whole mental and physical health podcast. Obviously I don't talk about physical health a lot because it is a lot about the mindset with Stoicism. But I do really want to be offering that kind of advice when I can. And so it's good to have somebody like yourself on here. And something that I was you're pleasantly surprised to learn about yourself is that you also are a follower of the Stoic philosophy, like Danny is as well. And so that's obviously why I wanted to have you on the show, because we can kind of talk about the health, and then we can talk about Stoicism and go back and forth there. And I do really want to talk about the keto diet as well. And I'm also always careful with this podcast because I know that Stoicism it attracts vegans, it attracts keto people, it attracts every type of diet person out there that you could possibly find, because it's just such a wide-ranging philosophy. But I guess if we could start with Stoicism, like when were you first introduced to Stoicism?
So I was, I don't know that I was ever formally introduced prior to college. Mm-hmm. I first actually learned that my predisposition toward worldview was called Stoicism in college when I was taking some philosophy classes. In particular, there are a few books that cover the history of philosophy. And if you've ever read any of the history of philosophy kinds of books, in particular Bertrand Russell's History of Philosophy, and there was a book that came out in the mid 90s called I believe it was called Sophia, it was called Sophie or something like that, and it was a sort of a modern adaptation of the history of philosophy, and in there what I realized was there was a school of thought that fit how I just naturally tended to see the world. And that is never too high, never too low. The more you just accept how things are and try to see the purposeness or the joyfulness or whatever, however you want to phrase it, in that thing, whatever it is, the less struggle that you will encounter. And when I was learning about this in college, I guess in university rather, because I want to be international. Because I guess the U.S. is the only place that doesn't say in university. Everyone else does. So when I was in university, I was learning about this, and it occurred to me that I was always a student of philosophy, just not formally. And as I was reading through some of the Stoic ideas, it was occurring to me that there is truth that abounds no matter what your philosophy. So, there are certain Buddhist tenets that fit hand in glove with the Stoic mentality. There are, Christian truths that fit the same way, and Jewish truths, and as you go along, and of course humanist truths as well that fit into that area. So to me, it was just something that, okay, it just made sense. I've never really been one to try to get too extreme when it comes to emotional involvement. And I don't know if that's just part of my upbringing. I've always been very, not standoffish, but very accepting of the thing because of the thing, not because of how it made me feel. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. And I'd like to go back to something that you said there about these truths, because something that I really do love about Stoicism, I believe that a truth is only a truth if it stands the test of time. And,
Sure.
and so with Stoicism, something that attracted me to this philosophy was that there's so many principles and teachings within this philosophy, within the works, that are even more true today than they were when they were written, and when they were thought about first. And that to me is just the perfect test of a truth. Even just looking at the dichotomy of control, we should worry about things that we can actually control, and
Right.
we should pay no attention to things that we can't. That's just a really good idea, and something that unless you actually think about it, you don't really realize it. Like, so many people are just going through life on this autopilot, and they just get angry at things that they will never have power over. But
Right.
then when you say this idea to them and you say, listen, like, you shouldn't worry about that because there's nothing that you can do about it, it just makes sense to them. It's kind of intuitive. But
Or it should. It
should be. That's the thing. Yeah. That's the thing. But so I mean, I think that everybody has their own idea of like what Stoicism really is. What is Stoicism to you? Like, how do you define it?
That's a great question. And as I was getting ready to come on the show, one of the things that it was occurring to me is because I'm a big fan of being self-reflective, and I'm always asking myself, why does this appeal to me, or why does this not appeal to me? Whatever the context. And I was trying to figure out what is it about Stoicism itself, the overarching philosophy that has the appeal. And I think for me, it's the thing that appeals to me the most, and this may sound weird, but for me, Stoicism is, it covers how to deal with pleasantries, with success, with accomplishment in a very rational, a very reasonable way. And what I mean is, it's easy for people to when you are successful, people oftentimes aren't prepared for that. They're more prepared for failure because failure happens more often. So whether they're actually intending to be prepared for it, or it just is a matter of they're just familiar with it, so they know how to handle it, or they're just better at it because they've done it more times, whatever the case may be. But people handle success much less elegantly and much less well, for lack of a better phrase, than they do failure. And to me, what I really like about Stoicism is it takes both sides. Like you're talking about, why worry about something you can't control, right? But at the same time, when you are successful, there's nothing about revel in that success. It's okay, you accomplished this. Now, what's the next thing? What is happening now? What is the next hill that you have to conquer, or enemy that you have to slay, or goal you have to reach, whatever the case may be. It's never about, okay, sit here and wallow in this, whether it's good or bad. And to me, that really spoke to me. So for me, the Stoicism is a very even balance on how to continue to move forward. Because as far as I'm concerned, if you're not moving forward, you are not moving at all. You're staying still. You're dying. However you want to phrase it. We have one life to live, and if you're not getting the most out of it, then you are doing something wrong. And the longer you sit and revel in the past, good or bad, the less you're actually getting out of life, as far as I'm concerned. So for me, Stoicism was about, okay, don't downplay good or bad. Accept it for what it is. Learn as you need to, but keep moving forward. And I hope that makes sense.
No, it makes complete sense. And if I could be selfish and jump in here with my own experience with Stoicism, I have absolutely found that Stoicism has even redefined my definitions of what success are.
Absolutely.
So, for example, there have been many times in my life where I did really want lots of money, and I saw in my future that I could have nice cars and a nice house, and it's completely redefined everything for me. And it said, okay, your goal isn't what comes as a result of success. Your goal is to be wiser, to have greater knowledge. Your goal is to do your best at whatever you're doing. Your goal is to be consistent, to be patient, and whatever comes, we'll take it as it comes. But I even still find today that I catch myself, like, if I make a little bit extra money each week, I'll start getting those feelings of, what could I buy? What could I use this?
Sure.
And I have to stop myself and say, listen, okay, Stoicism, like let's get some Stoicism here. Let's get some perspective. Maybe you don't need to buy anything. Maybe that's just a reflection of a good week. Maybe we can save that, and so it even helps with like spending habits. But that's why I believe that Stoicism is like such a good philosophy to influence every single area of your life, because it kind of all trickles down.
Absolutely.
And speaking of which, I guess I'd like to know if you feel like Stoicism has helped you on your journey to better health throughout your life.
Well, it has, but tying back to the intro when I was talking about nutrition and keto and stuff, one of the things that I've found is that one may not be able to have the proper mentality because of certain health restrictions. And what I mean is this. So I'll speak strictly from my own personal experience, not trying to dress anyone in this at all.
No, this is exactly what we want. We just want your personal experience. It's perfect.
Okay. So then for me, as an individual, I suffer from depression. Now, I didn't know that I was suffering from depression, because oftentimes the person who's suffering from depression, that's just normal to them, and they don't know it's depression. Now, someone can tell you, hey, you seem like you're depressed, but you don't know until you've actually experienced something that isn't that. So when you're in that state, it becomes very hard to be able to self-assess. It becomes very hard to be able to, as you so eloquently point out, to, okay, let me take a step back. I made some extra money, so maybe the best thing to do would be save. Because when you're in that depressed state, you're not thinking, I don't want to say that you're not capable, but for whatever reason, you're just not in that state of mind to where you can comprehend or execute on that level to where you can actually perceive there is a future, if you know what I mean. So by changing certain lifestyle habits, it sort of gets the noise away from the signal so that you can start hearing the signal again of who you actually are. So you can start dialing that into, okay, I can now reattune, what it is that I want to be, who it is I want to be, how it is I want to live, that kind of thing. So that was my experience. When I shifted and it seems so trite to just say I changed what I ate and it changed my mentality, and it allowed me to get back to this state of even keeledness. But it's true. It may seem trite to someone who is not familiar with what I'm saying, but it is very true. So prior to that, I didn't know, like when I was in college, I was fine. Years go by, years of bad habits. It weighs on a person, and obviously bad things happen. I'm overweight. I'm in a dead end job. I'm miserable. I'm taking it out on my family. I'm just not in a great place, and I've got a failed business. I'm in debt. All of these things weighing down on me, and it's hard to when your victory for the day is, hey, I got out of bed today. It's hard to be able to push that to any sort of extreme to be able to anticipate life, really. So getting from that point, just by changing what I eat, to, okay, this is who I am, to waking up one morning going, oh, this this is what I'm supposed to feel like. And now I can paint with a full canvas, and I can see things the way they are, and I can then anticipate, and I can, like you say, be able to predict and plan and realize and assess and analyze, all of those things that I couldn't do before because I was just not in that mind space to be able to do that. So health is crucial to be able to accurately view the world. And there's an old saying about viewing the world through a mirror darkly, right? And that sort of brain fog thing of living an unhealthy lifestyle, whatever that case may be, whether it's alcohol, cigarettes, anything that you're doing that is not idealized for your health can impact how you view the world. Changing that allows you to clear that canvas so that you can then paint the person you want to be and realize this is who I am, this is how I see the world, and now I'm back in the driver's seat and I'm not just, white knuckling it on this ride so that I don't feel like I'm in control of anything. I know I'm rambling, but I hope that makes sense.
No, it makes complete sense. And so was it the ketogenic diet that you went on that was helping you in terms of eating better to get out of that depression?
It was. It really was. And it happened pretty quick too. For me, I woke up one morning, and this was in I was just trying to convince my son. Like, I wasn't doing it for me, because I didn't know I was depressed. I wasn't aware of anything that was going on. I just knew I was sad. Like life sucked. That's all I could tell. And my son's got epilepsy, so again, that throw that on top of all the things that I'm talking about. And my son is saying, but then when the doctor's saying, try this, it might help. And my son's saying, no, I can't do that. And so I decide I'm going to show you that it's possible and it's good for you and the whole bit. And just by sheer force of will, all I did was change how I ate. And that allowed me within a couple of days to sort of snap out of it. And I sat in my chair and all of a sudden I felt euphoric and I thought, okay, I want to chase this. Like I want to find what's the source of this thing that I'm experiencing right now. And by allowing myself the freedom to do that, it allowed me to recapture that sort of core essence philosophy that I've always lived by. And I got to tell you that it drives a lot of my closest friends and partners and coworkers crazy. Because I don't get super excited about anything, and I don't get super sad about anything, and it kind of drives them nuts, but I would not want to live another way. This is ideal. Before I would default to everything sucks, and I'm just going to go back to bed. But I would much rather be this way, where, hey, we just landed a huge deal. Fantastic. What's the next step? Or, hey, we just lost a huge deal. That sucks. What do we learn from it? What's the next step? So to me, that is the way to live, because you don't run the risk of burnout that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It does really save you from a lot of stresses that people who don't understand this philosophy deal with on a regular basis. And what I find is that they don't realize that they don't have to deal with these kinds of stresses. They don't realize that there are things that they're worrying about that will never be fixed. And I want to go back to getting out of your depression there, because with my very limited dealings with people who have gone through heavy depressions, what I've heard from them was that these small actions are the things that get you out of depression. As in, like, if you can just get out of bed every day, then that's a huge win. If you can just get up and make breakfast, that's a huge win. So I guess I'd like to know, have you thought about like how much of you getting out of that depression was to do with the diet, and how much of it was to do with you actually having that goal of getting up, making these different meals, doing different things, and then achieving that over a few days? What do you think is kind of the ratio there?
So that's a good question. And what I attribute it to, is somewhat more primal than anything else. I'm a father, so I was faced with the challenge of my son, right? So the impetus for me was, here's my son whom I love, and I've witnessed him have seizures so bad that I thought he was dying in my lap, so my motivation was, I don't ever want to see that again. I want anything even if it's outside half a percent possibility chance that it's going to work, I want to take that chance, so that forced me into a state of getting uncomfortable, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So that you talk about these little steps of little wins, right? So all my motivation was about him, not about me. And all I did was start with like a single cup of coffee that I put some butter in, right? It sounds weird, but that's just how it starts. And I had that, and like the same morning I started feeling better. I wasn't out of it, but I started feeling better. And I thought, okay, I want to continue to do this. And it wasn't until 2 or 3 days later that I started feeling this euphoria, and I started realizing, okay, this may be good for me. So the initial motivation, the initial like small win that you're talking about was give your son a chance. That's really the voice that was in my head. Give Noah a chance, show him that it's possible, and hope that he takes the bait. Really. Is what it comes down to, because I had no guarantee that even if I did it, that it was, because I could have hated it, and it could have been a total disaster, from just the outset. But I had to do something. So that little win was just, I'm gonna drink something this morning. I'll drink coffee. Okay, then I'll just add this thing to it. Okay, so it was like you're talking about, these little incremental kinds of things that you can try to build upon. That's exactly how it is. That is, it doesn't get any more precise than that. And honestly, for me, that is really the essence of my Stoic worldview. Everything is just these little incremental advancements. It's not about trying to get the huge leap. It's, okay, today's Wednesday. Here's the thing that I've got to do. Okay, got that done. Fantastic. Tomorrow, this is the things I got to do. Or, in the next hour, this is what I need to do. And it's never about trying to take this light year leap forward. It's about one step in front of the other, one foot in front of the other. Next step. What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And soon you've climbed a mountain because you've taken these little steps forward over a period of time. It's consistency over time. So to me, it all just fit together. And it just allowed me to be able to get back to where I was, in my younger days.
Yeah, I love that. And so I can see how kind of that selfless attitude there of like, I'm doing this for my son, that could have also played into it as well. Just doing something that's not for you, it's for someone else. And I'd actually like to talk about that. So with your son, what happened when you put him on this ketogenic diet? So actually, maybe before you say that, I know that many people in my audience will have already listened to my interview with Danny Vega, so they have an idea of what the keto diet is, and I'm actually on the keto diet at the moment, but maybe for people who don't understand, maybe give us a very quick analysis of what it is, how it works, and then could you tell us about how your son kind of interacted with that diet?
Sure. So from a 20,000 foot view, a very generalized view, the ketogenic diet, what I term a well-formulated ketogenic diet, is taken from two research scientists, Stephen Phinney and Jeff Volek, both doctors, and they did research starting in the early 80s all the way up till today, and essentially they qualify a well-formulated ketogenic diet as essentially somewhere between 65 and 80% of all of your energy is coming from fat. You're getting between roughly 20 or less grams of carbs per day, and the rest is protein. So it's a very high fat, very moderate protein, very low carbohydrate diet, which is completely counter to what we hear as the orthodox nutrition guidelines that we hear. So hearing that, of course, when you're trained from birth that fat's bad, and you need your healthy whole grains and lots of carbs, and sugar's fine, just in moderation, all of these things, which was something I was never good at, was moderation when it came to sugar. But hearing all of those things, like, okay, keto is completely different than that. And of course my son's like, oh, you're going to die of a heart attack. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe I'm going to die of a heart attack, because you've been brainwashed, really. So going into it, it was really just about trying to, eat the right kinds of, very high fat food, but the right kinds of fat, moderate protein, but the right kinds of protein, low carbs, but still containing the right kinds of carbs. And so convincing my son, so my son's a chip off the old block. He's also a sugar addict, just like I am. And, telling him, okay, because the reason he decided to go ahead with it is because he saw me drop something like 60 pounds in a couple months. And again, I wasn't trying to lose weight. So that's one of the things, it's great for weight loss, but that wasn't why I did it. And he saw that and he was like, okay, I want to do that, because the medication that he was on, one of the side effects was weight gain. And, he at the time was just turning into his teens. And of course, body image, this, that, the other. So he said, okay, I want to give it a shot. And one of the things that we had to figure out was, okay, he likes these foods. He likes these non-keto foods. So can we make these non-keto foods as actual keto foods? So we had to figure out, okay, here's how we can convert these things over to where he's getting the same sort of flavor that he really likes, so that he'll stay with it, but he's not getting all the deleterious material, the deleterious, nutrition stuff. So, it was a trial and error period. There were certain things that he didn't like, and we had to figure those things out. And, it took a few months for us to dial things in. And, once we finally got things worked out, it worked out really well for him. He was quite young when he was diagnosed. He was, I think, 12 or 13 at the time that he was diagnosed. And when he started keto, it was a year or two later. And he went 2 years seizure free.
Wow.
And this is going from, in the very early stages of diagnosis, he was suffering from one seizure every 3 months. Then it went to multiple seizures a week because his medication was being shifted around, and it was getting really bad. And that's why sort of this Hail Mary keto thing was thrown at us by the neurologist. And once we got him keto combined with a certain medication, he went 2 years seizure free. And since he was a young kid and he got bigger, he had to adjust his medication, but we didn't adjust it in time. So he did have a couple of breakthrough seizures a couple of years ago. And we got his medication dialed back in. So he's been, again, seizure free for a couple of years now. And it's to the point where he's looking at getting a car. He's living on his own. So he's functioning very well. He's got it really dialed in. He's got a real good understanding of what is appropriate, what is not appropriate, and the consequences of both of those actions. So it was a trial period at first, but the benefits were tremendous. The side effects of neurological medication are just ridiculous. There's not just the emotional, there's aggression, there's depression, there's weight gain, there's, lethargy, you're messing with the most powerful organ in the human body. So there's going to be wide ranging ramifications for that. And being able to combat both the illness and the side effects all in one fell swoop was really, really beneficial. So it really did help him quite a bit and helped us quite a bit as my wife and I, because we weren't having to watch my son suffer. We weren't having to watch our son, suffer along. He was doing much better. If that makes sense.
No, that's awesome. And yeah, I think something that's so exciting about these kinds of stories is that I really think with all of the research that's coming out today and all of the science that is what am I trying to say here? There's so much science now proving the really positive effects of changing your diet to take care of all of these problems that we face as human beings. For so long it's just been about, take this pill, cover it up, take this pill, cover it up. But honestly, it's just so exciting to see so many people taking care of diseases and illnesses and conditions with simple changes in their diet. And I think it's a really good place that we're heading in. It's a good direction that we're going in. And even going back to the depression side of things, I'm pretty sure it's been scientifically proven now that exercising on a regular basis is more effective than some antidepressant drugs.
Yeah, for sure.
And so there are all these things that we can do, going back to what you're saying about the kind of primal lifestyle, going back to, our roots essentially, and saying, well, what are we supposed to be doing as human beings? And I'm going to throw Stoicism in here because I throw it in with everything, but even with Stoicism, it can teach us what are we supposed to do in terms of how we view the world that can help us to get out of depressions and get out of these problems that we have. And I've even received emails from people saying that this philosophy has helped them to get out of a depression because it teaches them how to have meaning in life. It teaches them what to follow and what to avoid. I guess I'd like to go back to kind of your life as a father, and I wanted to know, do you think that Stoicism has helped you at all to be a better father?
To some degree, yes. Let me caveat this by saying I'm a terrible father. I don't qualify myself as a good parent anyway. I would be much worse if I wasn't as stoic as I am. Now, if my wife and kids were hearing this, they would be laughing right now, because for me, so I have hangups, right? I'm a three-dimensional human being, and I'm flawed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm more than willing to share that. For me, it's the little nitnoid kinds of little things that just small things that really eat away at you, that really kind of make me blow up. Not the huge catastrophic stuff. The huge catastrophic stuff, I'm totally okay, and I can handle that. It's the little just idiotic things that for whatever reason they should never happen, but they always happen. Those kinds of things. So for any parent out there, that is what parenting is dealing with all the little just the little nitnoid crap that just keeps popping up. It's rarely about the huge catastrophic stuff. So for example, my son's diagnosed with epilepsy. That's a catastrophic thing that I was good with, but little things like, not cleaning your room, or little things like, just stuff that kids do that just really irritate me. That's where I have a hard time keeping control of, that even keeledness. So, but I will say, if I wasn't stoic, it would be twice as bad, because it would be both the little nitnoid stuff and the catastrophic stuff that would be setting me off, that would be making me, sort of grind my teeth and get in that fury state, for lack of a better phrase. But you make an interesting point when you talk about trying to pulling keto and stoicism together, because I view keto as the stoicism of the nutrition world, because it allows you to stop viewing food as a reward, and to stop viewing food as entertainment, and to stop viewing food as this other than fuel kind of state. To me, food is fuel, and that's all it is. And to me, it's a very stoic way of viewing it. It can be delicious. It can be terrible. It's still fuel. And it's not about, getting emotionally involved in it. It's about realizing what it's for and what you need it for. And so from that perspective, I just wanted to throw that in there. From my perspective, keto is the stoicism of the nutrition world. But going back to being a father, I think now, given what I've been able to to learn about myself because of the nutrition changes, because of the health changes, if I could go back and do it again, I would be a much better father, because I could actually implement the proper form of stoicism from the beginning. You know what I mean? I wouldn't have I would not have as many of the hang-ups that I've had over my life for various reasons. Not saying that as an excuse. It just, as I am self-reflective, and I think to myself, okay, if I could go back and do it again, I would be better at it. Some people say, like, if I could go back and do it over again, I never would. And I'm not of that ilk. I would like another shot at it, because I know I can be better at it, really. I don't get another shot at it, and that's okay. But I'm willing to say that I wasn't as good as I could have been.
Yeah. And that's right. And I mean, like, Stoicism basically says, well, look, forget about that. What we focus on now is how am I going to act today? How am I going to be a better father today? And I'm sure that you absolutely use that in your life as well. I guess I want to be respectful of your time, and I only have a couple more questions, but maybe.
Sure.
For the people out there who are very interested in the kind of keto side of things, what are some misconceptions that people have about the keto diet, and how can you kind of eradicate those misconceptions?
Well, there are many. One of the most often quoted to me is, eating all that fat's bad for you. Your cholesterol is going to get, it's going to increase, and that's going to kill you with a heart attack or a cardiovascular disease of some kind. You need carbs, just various forms of the same thing. And from my perspective, none of those things are really all that compelling, because from the scientific side of things, the literature does not back those statements up. The idea that saturated fat and cholesterol are bad for you are not proven in the scientific literature. It was an assumption that was started by a gentleman by the name of Ancel Keys back in the 60s. He formulated something called the diet heart hypothesis, based upon an infamous study that he put together called the 7 Nations study, or 7 country study. And he basically cherry picked 7 countries out of 22 to show that the data proved what he was trying to prove, and that was that cholesterol is bad for you. And the basis for this was, if you pump a rabbit full of saturated fat, their cholesterol levels will go through the roof, to the point where their blood, you can see clumps of cholesterol floating through their blood. And these researchers, this Ancel Keys and his group, sort of extrapolated that out to mean, well, then if it happens to rabbits, it happens to humans. Never mind the fact that rabbits don't eat meat, right? Their saturated fat is not a part of a rabbit's diet. They eat, carrots. I've seen the cartoons; they eat carrots. So that's kind of it's that kind of scientific hocus pocusry that we're dealing with. So from my perspective, I don't see any science. I don't see any literature showing that saturated fat is bad for you. It does elevate your cholesterol, but the corollary to that is I see no evidence that cholesterol being raised is bad for you either. In fact, I've interviewed cardiologists, cardiothoracic surgeons who are inside people's chests all day long, and will tell you there is no correlation between their diet and the level of cardiovascular damage, in terms of whether or not they're eating a bunch of meat, whether they're vegetarians, whether they're vegans, whether they're whatever. It is dependent upon a variety of factors. The number one being how much sugar do you eat? Strange. So the other thing is that people say is you need carbs. You have to have carbs, and typically they'll follow that by saying that your brain needs carbs, and that's partially true. There are certain cells. There's a small segment of your brain that cannot burn anything but glucose, which is a simple form of sugar, for fuel. And now the rest of your brain can burn ketones, which are the byproduct of fat. It's beta oxidation, fat metabolism, because fat itself can't cross the brain-blood barrier, so that it gets converted to ketones, which is why it's called a ketogenic diet. But certain cells in your brain cannot burn ketones. They have to burn glucose. And there are also some certain cells in your kidneys as well that are in the same position, unable to actually burn anything but glucose. And it's true. So you do need glucose, but the thing is your body will produce that. And I've done experiments on myself where I've eaten nothing but beef for an entire month. Didn't have any carbs at all. Nothing but water, coffee, beef. That's it for an entire month. And I would measure my blood glucose levels at different times, based upon different activity, based upon, I just woke up, whatever. And your blood glucose is going to go up and down just like anything else, because your body can produce that sugar through something called gluconeogenesis. And it does that by when your body breaks down fat cells, a triglyceride, that's three fatty acids attached to a glycerol backbone. Those three fatty acids get converted into ketones, and that glycerol backbone is then thrown into the Krebs cycle as the precursor for what's needed as glucose. So all of that stuff can be converted. So the fact that you're not eating any carbs doesn't mean that you're not getting the carbs that you need. So I know that was a really long-winded explanation, but those are the primary sort of high fat's going to kill you. Saturated fat's bad for you. Your cholesterol is going to rise, and you need carbs. Those are the main arguments that I hear. And my response is, as I said, yeah, you do need carbs, but you don't need dietary carbs. You can get all the carbs you need. Your body's going to make it for you. Saturated fat, there's no evidence that it's bad for you, depending on what your goals are. If you eat a whole bunch of fat and you're trying to cut a whole bunch of weight, it's possible that your metabolism may be set up to where that may be deleterious and you have to cut back on it. But eating the fat's not bad for you in terms of your cardiovascular health. It may not be moving you towards your goals in terms of shedding body fat, but it's not going to be bad for you in terms of your cardiovascular health. And then, of course, cholesterol. I want to be around the day that we can get rid of this cholesterol monster that is just ridiculous. There's a gentleman who has been doing research just on his own. I call him a citizen scientist, and he has a website called the Cholesterol Code, and he's done just tremendous work on trying to prove that cholesterol is not this nefarious thing, that it's not this bad thing. It's perfectly okay. And he's actually, by the way, sorry, his name is Dave Feldman. He's not a nutritionist. He's an engineer, and he's forcing the nutrition world, forcing nutrition scientists to reassess cholesterol. He's not a nutritionist. He's just a regular guy who thought, cholesterol looks like a distributed network. I'm going to investigate this. And he did. And he proved that cholesterol is nothing but a localized variable that you can shift. If you change your diet for 3 days, you can change your cholesterol numbers. So, and like life insurance policies, health insurance, like all kinds of things are based upon your cholesterol numbers, and you can manipulate it just by changing what you eat. So, all of these things, I realize I'm rambling now, but it's just all of these things play into like all of the arguments that I hear against keto. And there are some legitimate ones. For example, if someone is suffering from a known condition where they cannot metabolize fat, they cannot be keto. They just can't. It just won't work. They'll die. And that's a rarity. That's like a 1 in a million person. So, clearly, but that's something that has to be accounted for. But, there's no other condition that I've read or seen where someone can't be aside from something like that. So all of these, all of these arguments against keto just don't hold water to me. And if they did, I would obviously change my perspective, but I have yet to see a compelling argument against keto. Oh, I will say this. I'm sorry. The one that my favorite argument. I know you're probably wanting to.
No. This is awesome. I honestly, I want people to get as much perspective on this as they can. So, whatever you can say there, absolutely.
Okay, so my favorite argument with keto, and I read this from people who are not anti-keto as well, but mostly from people who are anti-keto, and that is, when you go back to not eating keto, you'll put all the weight back on. And I want to just stare at them and force them to read what they just wrote. Seriously, did you hear what you just said? Keto is bad because, and I quote, when you stop eating keto, you'll put the weight back on. And how is that keto's fault? Why is keto bad? Because when you stop eating keto, when you go away from eating a ketogenic lifestyle, you're going to get diabetes again, or you're going to show signs of diabetes again, and you're going to have, all these other illnesses, and you're going to put the weight back on. That's because of keto? No, you stopped being keto, and that's what happened. So that's my favorite argument against keto, because it makes zero sense whatsoever.
Yeah, and even in my own experience, I did keto for about a month at the start of this year. Saw great results. Then I went off and did something different. I did the Tim Ferriss slow carb diet. I'm back on the keto at the moment, just trying to, I was going to give it 3 months this time, really give it the proper shot. But even though that is a terrible argument with myself, I did find that, it really did kind of normalize my weight. And I honestly didn't feel like after I got off it for a little bit, anything bad happened.
Sure. Yeah.
It was pretty amazing, the results, actually. But yeah, I guess I really want my audience to have the chance to follow you and find out more about what you do. So I guess before we head off, where can my listeners go? Tell them about the podcast, and also if there's anything else that you wanted to share with the audience before we head off, I'd love for you to share that now. Sure.
So if anyone wants to learn more about what I do, the main website is ketoevangelist.com. And I do a Keto Evangelist podcast every week. I have a couple of other podcasts. One is the Ketogenic Athlete, which you came on, Simon, and you and myself and Danny got to hang out. And one of the most technically difficult podcasts we've ever been through, but it was a good thing that we had a bunch of Stoics on, because nobody got upset. And you were a blast. We really had a lot of fun with you on the show. A third one that I do is the Keto Evangelist Kitchen podcast. I do that with a lady by the name of Carrie Brown, who's a classically trained chef, and she also overcame bipolar depression with keto. So we have a similar story in that regard. So there's the Keto Evangelist, the Ketogenic Athlete, Keto Evangelist Kitchen, and I'm Keto Evangelist on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. So if anyone wants to follow along my ridiculous exploits, you're more than welcome to. And I've got contact pages on all of my websites. So if you have questions about anything, please feel free to drop me a line. Someone on my team will answer you if you have questions. So yeah, there you go.
Awesome. I love it. Brian, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate you sharing all of your knowledge and experience with us. And yeah, we'd love to have you back another time. So until then, have a great day.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Love it. Ciao. So there we have it, my interview with Brian Williamson. I really hope you all enjoyed that, and I really loved having that conversation. Brian is just such a great guy, so humble and so amazing with the amount of value that he puts out there into the world. I mean, I mentioned at the start of the podcast that he also hosts 4 podcasts on his own every week. So he's basically doing everything that I'm doing except quadrupled. So a very busy person. And such a great person to talk to. So I was really excited to have him on here, and I hope you all enjoyed it. And I will talk to you all next time. But until then, I hope that this episode has helped you on your rise to the good life. Ciao. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Practical Stoic Podcast. I hope it's been valuable for you. And if you'd like to support the show, then you can go to patreon.com/Simon Drew. If you'd like to try mindset coaching with me, then you can book your first free consultation by going to risetothegoodlife.com/coaching. To join the community, just go to Facebook and search for the Practical Stoic Mastermind. The links to all of these places are included in the show notes, but for now, this is Simon Drew signing out.